thinks that I am unforgettable too.
It is difficult enough to be successful in the world of popular music. It is tougher still when you are the daughter of a pop and jazz icon. But Natalie Cole has been a jazz, R&B, and pop star for nearly 3 decades now. With hits like When I Fall in Love and I Live for Your Love, Natalie Cole is no longer thought of as Nat's little girl.
With you.
Her 1991 album, Unforgettable, sold 11 million copies and it won 7 Grammy Awards. Her latest album is called Snowfall on the Sahara, and I am pleased to have her back on this program.
Welcome back. Charlie. Thank you very much.
I was looking for the title song here, which you co-wrote.
Right, Snowfall
on the Sahara. Tell me about that song.
Actually, you know, this is a demo version. This is the demo. And what we did, when I gave it to David Foster, this song was written 6 years ago. And David loved it so much.
Written by you and someone else?
A guy named Peter Wolf from Vienna. And it just sat around, and I just continued to believe in this until I felt like it was ready for the right project. And when I gave it to David, he said, I love it so much, I don't want to touch it. So he just added some strings, a little hip-hop beat. And
so you took the demo
I didn't have to do
put it on the final album, did nothing.
That's right. Yeah.
David Foster's a genius.
Yeah. He is.
In some ways, this is going back to roots for you?
Absolutely, yeah.
Jazz,
because
gospel, rhythm and blues.
Yeah, you know, I've always done a little bit of everything. Yeah. And since Unforgettable, I did 3 more albums, including even a wonderful Christmas album. I mean, my life changed so much from that Unforgettable project. It really, really did. But I still missed my R&B and my pop. Yeah. You know?
Let me come to that in a moment, but tell me how your life changed because of Unforgettable.
Well, it kind of catapulted me into a status that I don't think I would have achieved had I continued doing the R&B and the pop. So it's a little bit of a, you know, it's like a 6-1.
You had just been known as a jazz artist or an R&B artist.
Or an R&B pop artist. Yeah, exactly. And so now I'm singing with Placido Domingo and Jose Carreras and, you know, and getting offers from all over the world.
2 tenors plus a soprano.
To perform for royalty and getting invited even to, you know, social events. And people wanted to meet and look in the face of, and it was like I got this whole new audience of people who didn't know anything about what I had been doing
didn't know anything
before.
about you. How much of it you think was the album per se and what you did with the duet?
I think
how much
90% of it was the album. Oh, no question. I think that what this album did was, it's like it reawakened something in a lot of people that thought this music was pretty much gone. They'd have to pull out their old records if they wanted to hear it again. They certainly weren't going into the record stores anymore because this kind of music wasn't selling. And between radio and musicians that were performing, I mean, so many of them said, thank you. You've given us work again. Yeah. I mean, you know, orchestras and lush arrangements came back, and it was just really something what this had, the impact that it had on the music industry.
Whose idea was it?
Well, it's kind of hard to really exactly say when it started, but I can tell you that in the early 80s, when I was singing live, but then I was starting to do Vegas. And I hadn't included any of my father's songs in my show for a very, very long time.
Because you wanted to be on your own and you didn't want the identification as Nat's daughter.
Yeah, I really needed to do that for myself. So now it had been going on, you know, 12 years or something like that. So what we did was, my manager then, my first manager, was Kevin Hunter, and he was thinking that maybe we should try to do a little something with Dad. Just some of Dad's songs, not necessarily something with Dad, you know, and of course electronically we were like very crude and raw. You'd go in the studio and record
your Dad songs like Mona Lisa and...
I hadn't even done that, hadn't done that at all. So what they did was, it was very crude. We took a reel-to-reel and recorded Unforgettable. And what they were able to do was, because I could have an orchestra when I was working at the Hilton then with Bill Cosby, they could mute the orchestra, and then I could sing back and forth with Dad, so that they would pump his voice through the speakers to the house. And I mean, it was really raw and very almost tacky, but it worked. And the audience was
Went
just
nuts.
They were just crazy. And so when we got around to, you know, actually doing this album, which in itself was a real coup, because I was under contract with a different record company. I was with the same record company that my dad was with.
Capitol.
When I went to Capitol EMI and said, you know, let's do an album of my dad's music, and their response was, well, maybe after you have a really big, successful album, then you can do something like this in case, you know, it's not a hit, then it won't look so bad. So I kind of went away with feeling like, well, what if I never have another hit album? And it turns out this was the hit album. In the meantime, EMI let me out of my contract, and I went to Elektra. And Bob Krasnow, I made my deal with Elektra with Bob Krasnow in his hospital room. He had just had hip surgery. And I said, I think I want to do this album of my father's music, but after I do a pop album. And he said, no, do this one now.
Yeah. But also, the point I was going to make is beyond you and your voice and the songs, it is that there's such nostalgia for Nat King Cole.
That's what I mean about the reawakening of for so many people. I mean, so many people loved my father. And the fact that he's sold records without my help, believe me, for the past 30 years, the sales went up even more. And this time, another audience was introduced to Nat King Cole. Not just the ones of my generation and before, and my parents and grandparents, but then this young generation, my son and his peers. And that's when you know you've got a hit, when it crosses over like that.
As I remember somewhere that he was one of the best sellers among deceased performers that Capitol had in its...
Still. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. I would say, I would challenge that he would, besides... Sinatra, I think Elvis Presley, I'm trying to think, maybe, I don't even think Marvin Gaye's catalog is quite as, well, first of all, it's not as extensive. You have to remember he had so much music. But there was just nobody like Dad. I mean, he really had a approach and a technique that was just all his own. And he just created it himself. You know, he was just one of those
And we forget, as you and I said.
People.
Yeah.
You really
remember him?
Oh, yeah, very well.
Well.
Yeah. And I have to keep doing certain things, like I have pictures of him all over the house and stuff, because I don't want to forget. You know, you do have a tendency to forget how popular he was to the public. That was my father. And you don't want to forget the neat things, the intimate things.
I think a daughter owes that to her father, or son owes that to his mother, and you know, in some sense of that's
and
what.
It's hard to lose a parent at that young age.
He was about 46, 7?
He was 46. I was 15. I had just turned 15, and that is a real crucial time for young women as well as young men.
Yeah,
you know,
sure
so it's a hard time to lose a parent.
High school and the whole thing. He was respected by his fellow musicians enormously.
Yes.
But not as a vocalist as much, or in addition to being a vocalist, because he was a great jazz pianist.
Right.
But sort of pulled away from it and would stop playing and just sing.
Yeah, and every now and then, though, when he would sit down at the piano, it would be so cool. Like, even in the middle of all this orchestra and all this lush stuff, you know, he'd walk over to the piano and do a little something. I think that he missed it. I think that there was a part of him that missed doing.
He gave it up because what? Detracted from his identity as a vocalist?
I think that once he started singing, that was kind of like, that was it. You know, everyone wanted him to stand up, and his presence was even more evident when he would stand in front of the microphone and sing. So that's when the piano really started taking even more of a backseat. You know, but at least I did get a chance to see him when he would do some really cool playing. Wow. Yeah.
This album, as we said, back to the roots, because after 1991, with Unforgettable, I mean, by then you had turned things around. You'd gone through the drug thing badly, and that was mostly in the latter 70s, I think.
Yes.
You know, and then in 91, you had this big success. You decided to go back because you missed these kinds of songs?
I did. I missed them. I think that what I've found out about myself is that I do sing jazz very well, but I'm not a jazz singer. I'm a singer, and I like to do a lot of different things.
And do you say that because you don't want to be typecast as a jazz singer? Or
No,
because
I think that's true. I really don't think that I consider myself a jazz singer.
Like
I've
Cassandra
never
Wilson
considered
is a jazz singer.
Exactly. No, I don't consider myself a jazz singer. So I think that's why I missed it, because it's a part of me just felt a little, a little like there was a little hole, there was a little something, there was a little funk that wasn't there, that I was kind of,
funk, yeah.
just the fun part of my whole musical experience that I grew up with and always loved, and I didn't want to, just put that to rest. I still wanted to do some more of that too.
You selected these, David selected these, Phil Ramone selected these?
Well, Phil and I Phil Ramone did most of the tracks. There's 12, Phil did 10 of them, David did 2.
Yeah.
We just kind of brought things to David. I just kind of call up David and say, hey, do you have some time? I need you to do some stuff for me.
Yeah.
And he always finds time to do something for me. But actually, Phil Ramone and I selected pretty much everything. And there were a couple of things on here that we weren't sure how it was going to work. Like one of the most interesting songs on here is the Bob Dylan song.
Yeah.
Bob Dylan actually wrote 2 verses for me, 2 substitute verses, because in his version, he talks about himself in the last couple of verses, and I wasn't able to use those. And
so he gave you 2 substitute verses.
Yeah, and his people said he never does that. Never, ever does that for anybody. So I have been, I was very, very pleased.
When you're going to reinterpret somebody else's piece, it's like you're playing an actress playing a character that maybe is a real person, something. I mean, how do you go about that? I mean, you go back saying, I've got to separate myself from what he or she did because I wanted to make it my own. And what they want to see is my own interpretation of this story embedded in this song.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the whole point, that everybody sees things differently. Just like you look at a painting on the wall and you see things in it that someone else will miss, or they'll see something else. And that's kind of the way I approach, especially remakes, because they're tough. Especially, I think that for me, I always try to pick remakes that nobody's ever heard of, because that way you can kind of get away with a lot more. But a lot of people were familiar with this Bob Dylan song. I wasn't. My sister recommended this song to me. I had no idea.
Said, you got to do this.
She said, you got to do this. The Donny Hathaway made that Leon Russell song really wonderful. A song for you. I was scared to death to do that one. That was not my idea. Phil Ramone thought that I should do that.
Because?
I don't know. Just because he felt that I could give it a different approach, a different sound. No woman has ever recorded that song. And that's another thing that I like to do. I'll take songs from guys, like the Bruce Springsteen Pink Cadillac. No woman ever recorded that song, And I thought, well, why not? That is the part of me that I really like, is that I will always go that extra step and do that extra challenge, because it's fun.
Anything from Aretha in here?
There was going to be an Aretha song, but as it turns out, the closest we got was probably the Lorraine Ellison tune called Stay With Me. And that was... Are you familiar with the story of that song? She was supposed to be doing a session next door to where Frank Sinatra was doing a session. Frank never showed up that day, and the room was full of musicians waiting to record. Frank was eloping with Mia Farrow on that day.
Yeah.
And this little girl named Lorraine Ellison was getting ready to make her debut record next door. Someone ran over there and said, we've got a room full of musicians here. If you want to use them, write some arrangements. And, we got to pay these guys. So, and that's how she got this particular song called Stay With Me. It was a big hit for her, and then Bette Midler did it in The Rose. And then I did. I think that's probably as... it's pretty gritty song. But no Aretha stuff this time.
Now, give me the lyrics for Stay With Me.
Where did you go when things went wrong, baby? Who did you turn to when you needed a shoulder to cry on? And then it says, wasn't I there for you? Maybe I was too good to you. And then she starts saying, but stay with me anyway.
I mentioned Aretha because she's, mentor, role model,
this woman
queen.
is is Rock Steady. I mean, that I know is her song, but that's how I think of her career, her voice, her tenacity for a lyric, for music. And you know what? We did a show here at Madison Square Garden last year, and we were all performing, and Aretha came into the dressing room, and she told me that they were going to do a movie on her life, and she would like me to play her.
You're on a tour now. You're doing a big tour, a small tour?
It's medium. You know, it's a lot of outdoor dates, which are great. You know, the weather is terrific. We're kind of staying out of most of the big cities for the summer, and hopefully we'll hit it hard in the fall with this new show, new music. And this is really, Charlie's 25 years of music, basically, that I got to find a way to fit in. And I think that's what's fun, you know, because when I start doing some of this old stuff in my jazz show, like I said, that audience of people who didn't know anything about Natalie Cole until Unforgettable, all of a sudden they say, oh, she did that song. They may have heard it, but they didn't know it was me, or they just didn't know. So I kind of want to give them a little bird's eye view of everything I've done. You know, so it'll be called an anthology or something.
There's always at least one song that you have to include, even if you've sung it 1,000 times.
Unforgettable.
Unforgettable.
It used to be This Will Be. Now it's Unforgettable.
You
Can't
cannot
go anywhere.
leave that audience.
No.
It's
They would storm the place.
They would storm the
Yes.
place. You know, give me my money back.
That's right.
It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Charlie,
very much.
so much.
New album.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Snowfall on the Sahara. Natalie Cole. Thank you for joining us. See you tomorrow night.